Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, where each week we take a look at language and conversation and dialogue and monologue and rhetoric and demagoguery and lots of other cool stuff too. So today we're talking about how do you bring empowerment to the masses. We've talked about it in prior weeks, looking inward first, then looking outward. And now what we're actually talking about is how do we not only be great speakers, but great listeners? And how do we condition the listening so that what we're talking about can be taken on by people and expressed in their own lives in their own particular way? And with that said, again, I'm Bill Carell. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. And we'll start off by introducing Lisa and Ken and Vanessa, after which we'll have Vanessa speak for a few minutes.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sheehan. I recently started Epic Magazine, which is empowering people in inspiring community, and that's what I do, my side gig, so to speak. And that's how I got introduced to this group.
Great, thanks for being here. Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken Caputo, founder of Quester's Way and teacher, entrepreneur, and just generally interested in doing whatever I can to make the world a little better.
True story. Vanessa?
Hey, Vanessa S Lewis. I'm a freelance writer and marketing copywriter. I've been a very curious person and came onto this podcast because whenever I've known Bill Carell for a number of years, and whenever we get together, we have these awesome conversations that just go on and take us each to really deep places. I guess we would call them spiritual conversations for the most part in nature, but existential, you name it, and it's just really exciting. And so we talk about some of that here on the podcast as well. Happy to be here today. Glad
you're here too. So you remember what we were talking about in the first segment?
Well, I was just saying, it's hard to not, where I left off when I was sharing, where I was reading some of Ken's great literature on his Facebook posts as of late, right?
Sure.
Or the other topics the other topics that we had mentioned. Where did you want me to pick up from, Bill?
You know what? The floor is yours. We were talking about
okay.
The way that people speak to large groups, and we're talking about also that can be for good. It can be for just to be coercive or manipulative, possibly. And then what ends up being possibly the goal is to create this sort of trust and intimacy with large groups of people, having used words as the lever.
Okay. So, all right. So in the last segment, we were discussing, there were two major words that came up, which we began with, which were rhetoric and demagogue. And we concluded with Bill sharing that the demagogue would very often, one of the definitions is the rabble rouser, and it would be the one who would not only create the narrative, but also control it. And that would be their goal, to make sure that it would stay with among the people, following the narrative that they originally created. So for their benefit, ultimately. And then we got into, and the main overarching theme was we wanted to discuss trust and intimacy as a community, and how what people are, whether in positions of leadership, well, we'll just stick it with positions of leadership, are sharing. Are they trying to build intimacy and trust, or do they have other goals in mind? So, well, that certainly, that can certainly, it depends, like everything, it depends on the source and what the ultimate goal is. you know, if someone speaks and just to tickle the ears and tell the people what they think they want to hear, to gain popularity or you know, so that they can maintain control. I mean, that's been done through history.
Yep.
Or is it ultimately to, well, I think any communication, the goal is to build trust. I think in general, and the intimacy happens just with having the communication. I think intimacy can build. Actually, I think intimacy can. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the words here. Intimacy can build greater when there's more communication. So I'll just say communication helps to build intimacy, and then trust is when we build up enough intimacy with someone. Intimacy really should be interchangeable with trust. So I think I'll leave it there, and I'm curious to hear what everyone else has to say. Thank you.
All right, I think that's pretty good. Now, I'm next in rotation, so I do have a few thoughts. I want to bring this back around.
Okay.
The whole idea of rhetoric and demagoguery isn't for somebody to go, wow, what a good rhetorician, you know, or what a great demagogue. It's like, no, that's just a guy speaking. And I'm starting to agree with him or her, you know. I don't know why, but there's something about the cut of their jib. There's something about the way that they carry themselves. There's something about the language that they use. It's the same in all instances. It is all about shaping and conditioning the culture to be able to accept more of the same and less of whatever is contrary to that. So if you stop and think about where we have come just in my lifetime, I mean, I'm not a really old man, but I'm kind of an old man. You know, having been born in 1954, I've seen a few and listened to a few, and there were people who were able to do very moving things and to deliver speeches that were easily identifiable with, you know, and they used it a lot of times, you know, by taking other people's famous lines and, you know, like ask not, you know, and we can all finish that particular one, right?
Yeah.
Or, you know, you look at the writings and the speeches of Martin Luther King. That man was one of the most powerful plagiarists on the face of the planet in such a good way, okay? He said at one point, he said, why would I ever have to come up with an original thought when there's such a bounty, you know, of great ideas that's already here? I just need to repurpose these ideas. And I think the same thing, you know, you can look around at people that have delivered really great speeches. And we're at a point right now where I think the demagoguery is out at the edges, you know, all the way out here and all the way out there, so that you would be led to believe that 50% of the people agree with all the way out here and the other 50% agree with all the way out there, which I want to say is more of the same. It's more of conditioning and shaping. And if you stop and think about what your own experience is, in terms of people that you talk with, what you read, would you really think, you know, that most people are very polarized one direction or the other, or how does it seem to be for you? Lisa, it's your turn.
Oh, I mean, polarized, yes. There's no, and polarization is happening within families, so it becomes abundantly clear. And I mean, I personally I think the majority of the world lies somewhere in the middle, but we are being led to believe that everybody's one way, far right or far left. And I cannot accept that fact personally, but so I'm being, like most people, I'm being sent videos, and once, you know, people know enough not to send me too much, but, and I watch it, and the whole video was not blatantly for somebody, it was blatantly against somebody.
Exactly.
Not even saying the opponent's name. They were just saying, do not vote for this group, basically, and then saying why not, but they were never said do vote for this person or group. So I find that really, and I was trying to think of if throughout history, if that's been what it boils down to, is like not to stand up for your beliefs, but to cut down the other person's, and go from that angle, which I find disturbing. So, and it's interesting to think, because I think a lot of people throughout history too, after enough time goes by, somebody gets elevated to, grand status, and then, but people that lived through that time will say that person was not well liked at the time, and it wasn't, a slam dunk. And they had all sorts of policies that people did not agree with. So, I'm thinking, is this just repetitive, or is this bigger than it usually is? So I know they want to make it sound bigger than it usually is. So I'm just trying not to fall into that left or right trap.
Yeah, there's a guy on television that says what we have is a war of two ideas, and Ken can speak eloquently on this for hours. But it's either this or it's that. You're locked into one or the other. But many times over the history of my lifetime, what we found out is what was stronger than the rhetoric was the silence. Mm-hmm. The silence, where the echoes out here on this end and out here on that end were very, very loud and almost inescapable. But when it came down to vote, when it came down to show up, when it came down to really make a difference, the folks in the middle that were silent, they were the ones that had the clout. And I'm kind of wondering if we're living through another one of those stages right now. And I think it's brilliant what you just shared. It's almost never are people talking about how the world can become a better place if we support the other team. That's kind of vanished in this day and age. And any other thoughts on that, Lisa?
Well, I mean, so then to go back to rhetoric, then, if we all had a better sense of how people use rhetoric, and then had the ability to use rhetoric ourselves, then, I think maybe the silence wouldn't be so deafening.
And there's risk, okay? Because the nature of rhetoric is to create this sensation from nothing, using only language, that there's something wrong around here, and making it palpable and have weight and mass and true and all the rest of that, because you can point to something in people's lives that they know and they actually have experienced in many different areas, and immediately demonstrate to them that what you're saying is true. It's so, there's no other possibility. However, the silent folks in the middle, the ones that we're not hearing from, they're not turning out to vote. They may not be going to rallies. They may just be sitting at home going, what are they doing, Ken? What possibly could they be doing?
Well, I don't know. I just think of product reviews. Like most people, when they're motivated to write a review, it's either because something worked out really bad or really good. Yeah. And if it just did what they expected, they don't write a review, So, but they buy the product. They're still buying. They're just not talking about it. So, so that's always the curiosity is, like I don't talk about politics. I just don't. I don't see the point in it, just because the voices that are going to be loudest are not ones that I choose to engage with, But what I do find, I almost shared a political video. I don't know if you guys saw the two guys running for governor in Utah. It's going around Facebook right now and YouTube or whatever. They did a video together saying we're running against each other to be the governor of Utah, and we're not going to say anything bad about each other. We're competing on why we think that will be good for this state. Let's set an example for everybody else who's pointing fingers at each other. And I found it interesting because, I went through this little thought experiment about why would I share this? And I chose not to share it because the topic was politics, but what I valued about it was the center of gravity of attention wasn't on what isn't, it's what we can accomplish working together. It was a what becomes possible video, if that makes sense. But it's much easier, like our brains, when faced with something complex, we instantly try to simplify it. So, so it's much easier to be angry at how someone else is being something that you don't agree with or value than to go through the complicated, process of figuring out how to work to make it better. So that's always the challenge. But I think that most people are buying the products. They're just being quiet about it. They're going to vote,
Well, yes, and while they're denigrating the other person, they have no evidence that the other person agrees with what they're denigrating at all, in most cases.
Yeah.
They're basically saying a fact. And then, you can't prove a negative. So this is like, I think the fundamental basis of modern speech is you cannot prove a negative. So we're going to call people names. We're going to say they did something. We're going to say they didn't do something. And we're going to leave the burden of proof up to the listener. So I like what you're saying in terms of who you hear from. And then many times, where do those reviews come from, Ken?
The reviews, they come from, the long tail, and like just the 5-star and the 1-star, the reviews are coming from the people who had an experience that was different from expected. So they speak out. Yes. And I wonder, just if you think about like our political world right now, I think what we're seeing is what most of us have come to expect. We're not actually at all surprised by any of this. We're outraged and disappointed or whatever else you're feeling, but it's kind of been growing into this for a really long time, Yeah.
Yes, and I have more grist for the mill here. What would you say if I told you it's been documented and proven that there are people that are professional reviewers that get paid
yes,
of dollars and have been shown to be the same, same person as a doctor, a lawyer, a school teacher, a mom, on and on and on it goes. And these people are making 6-figure incomes by endorsing products that they've never used and don't even know how they're used. And they make no statements about, the efficacy of the individual attributes of the product. They just say how great the whole product is. So there's always that. And then there's trolls that are out there that their job is to post as many bad posts as they possibly can. Vanessa, I hear you laughing in the background. Do you have something to say on that?
Well, actually, I wasn't laughing. I was agreeing with you when you said the trolls. Because I think we all have seen or possibly experienced ourselves some troll activity.
And is all of that activity meant to give you more confidence or to give you less? We don't know, do we? We don't know. So it's very simple and easy to now say the information that you're seeing online is all controlled by the Russians or the Iranians or the Chinese or the Kazakhstanians, whatever. So all of this taken as a whole, Ken, when was the last time you watched network TV?
Oh my God. I don't even know. Back when there were only 3 channels.
So for many people, watching this is like eating caramel corn, They know it's bad for them, but they can't stop, right?
Yeah. I practice abstinence. It's healthier. But the other thing, Bill, just thinking so why are people getting paid to do those reviews? Because what's the goal of the person with the product? To sell it. And if they're not interested in selling it ethically, and we've demonstrated that we can be influenced by social proof, then really we're telling them to do this by buying the product. So they're going to do more of it. Perfect. And then the ones that are like, well, I want to be ethical and I don't want to do that, and their product doesn't get bought, now they're stuck. Just look at professional cycling, and Lance Armstrong and that whole debacle. If you go back to it, they'll tell you the only way you could win was by doping. And, and that was the way the culture had evolved, to where they had basically all convinced each other that cheating wasn't cheating. It was just being smart at cheating so that you could win the race, So it's interesting, these kind of second and third order consequences that come about, and it's if everybody ignored the social proof and ignored the reviews, then they'd stop doing it.
Yes. I'll give you one more example to just kind of demonstrate the hyperbole that's actually being applied to information. I saw this unbelievable claim on a get a free bottle, buy a bottle, 60-day supply, guaranteed to blah, 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 blah. So I went and I Googled. Yeah, I did that. I Googled the name of the product, and what came up with the 12 things that the maker of this product don't want you to know. Okay, or find out before you spend your money. This product is not worth the cost of whatever it is. So they would rope me in. They did. I would go in and I would watch the first 10 minutes of a 40-minute video. The first 10 minutes was, we didn't actually find anything wrong with this. As a matter of fact, what we found was, this is the best thing since sliced bread. It is the best thing since polka dots. It is the best thing since puppies. And it's like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. So not only are people getting paid to do a phony promotion, they actually have whole websites that are dedicated to debunking the fact that there's anything wrong with the product. Come to find out, I couldn't find a real negative review on this particular product. However, it was roped in. It was to give you a product for $39.99 and rope you into a $600 a month, from after month 3 on, in the terms and conditions. All right, so moving back again, it's all out there. This is a dangerous place to be, isn't it, Vanessa?
To be here listening to our conversations right now.
Yes.
To be here in the world. What's the dangerous place to be, Bill? Please clarify.
Yeah, you name it. But have you seen The Social Dilemma?
No.
I'm going to recommend between now and next week. Lisa, did you get a chance to watch it?
What is it?
The Social Dilemma.
Is it a movie? Is it a?
It's a video that's put together to talk about how Twitter and Instagram, and Facebook, that they're what they stumbled into, their ability to control people's thinking and to reinforce what they seem to be most interested in believing, so that could ultimately move them towards purchasing products that normally would be purchased by people that agree with their political views, etc. Very, very interesting. So if you haven't seen it, Ken, you've seen it, right?
Yeah, I did. I watched it.
Yeah. Am I summarizing it correctly, or would you add any other disclaimers or buts or how buts?
I guess the only thing is, I found it interesting. Like it was good learning the information. It was also interesting thinking about where it started and how it ended up here. And, for various reasons, whatever, it ended up where it is. But what I came away with was thinking, well, now that I'm aware, what am I personally going to do about it? How am I going to be accountable for how I interact, with whether it's social media or searching or whatever? If someone's telling you something and it goes against, and you're aware that it goes against, and you're paying attention to their intention, now you can guard against it. So, so I think it was good in the way it brought your attention to something that you may not have been thinking about. More interesting to me is what you do with it after you know it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you know smoking is bad for you, and everyone's telling it's bad for you, and you don't quit smoking, who's that on now? Is it really on the tobacco companies that you didn't quit smoking, even though it's hard? Yes. And there's an addiction and all the other things, and maybe it's not your fault that you started, but now you're at a choice point. What do you do?
So just to kind of expand on that a little bit more, all of the people that were interviewed are people that were at the developmental level. There's a guy who worked for 2 or 3 different corporations, including Google and Twitter and Facebook, all 3. And one of them was the guy who invented the thumbs up like all those years ago. And what they found was people were addicted to that. They'd make a post and they'd check back every 10 or 15 minutes to see if they had more thumbs ups. That was the first thing where they, wow, this is kind of interesting. So then another man who either was CEO he wasn't CEO. He might have been in charge of client facing development or something of that nature, who said he would go home at night and he'd hop on to see if he was getting responses to the changes that they'd made that day, that he was actually falling prey to the exact same addiction that all of the people they were trying to get addicted were. So I think if everyone were to watch this, and if parents were to watch it, up to and including not allowing, I mean, just shutting off cookies, turn off your location information, whatever you think you're getting benefit from Google for free, you're not. They're not only selling your information to other people that you'll never have any control over, they're also using it to manipulate what you get in the mail, what you see on anytime that you go on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. So we're talking about, we started with rhetoric and demagoguery, and now we're going to another area where I am saying it's the same technique. However, it's completely invisible to those of us that are seeing it and being influenced by it. Does it influence us? Does it give us an emotional and visceral response? The answer to that question is they sure hope so. It's timely because we're going to be having some very interesting, I think, I don't know, maybe they will be, maybe they won't be, but Congress is going to be, both the Senate and the House have got hearings with these big internet companies. I'm hoping at some point that there's some way that we can get some clarity on it, and also give us the opportunity to disconnect and still be able to access information that should be available to everyone. So Vanessa, as a writer and as somebody who is writing copy and content clearly you're hoping that the people who read the stuff that you write, that it creates some sort of a relationship or some sort of a response. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so certainly. So words, so it's always been talking about all along, words can be used to ignite a certain response in people. What I do with copywriting, which is essentially known as sales and print, sales writing. You have a specific goal from the get-go, and then you're also analyzing your audience from the get-go, and then you're deciding which words will resonate with them from the very first word. And then there's the mediums where the writing is. If it's a radio spot, or you might want to have. Well, let's just start with a physical writing. You want to have, if it's something done online, you want to have spaces, and you want to have maybe some capital letters, and you want to have, so there's the visual appeal as well. But just bringing it back to the words that are used. Again, it's everything like you've been talking about the last few segments. Language is very powerful, and language can affect your audience with the words that are chosen. Can bring up emotion, and can even persuade someone to take the action that you initially wanted them to take. So
that's great. And used for good. I don't know if anybody goes to church and listens to sermons. Every sermon that I've ever heard was about instructing and giving a way forward, to allow people, to handle the breakdowns in their lives and to be more one way or another way if they choose to. And all of these things are, it's kind of the culture that we live in terms of being spoken to in groups by individuals, or groups that are divided as individuals but are really getting out a group message and that sort of thing. So to kind of bring this full circle with regard to empowerment, what if the keys to the kingdom don't lie in terms of necessarily believing or disbelieving what you hear or see, what if we're continuously given the opportunity to have a reaction to something and then be curious about that reaction and ask a question about it? And as Ken would say, continuously ask a better question.
Mm-hmm.
So having a reaction to something is neither good nor bad. It's like your hair growing. You know, that doesn't cause you any discomfort until all of a sudden you look in the mirror and say, my bangs are down over my eyes and I really can't see all that well anymore. And there's an appropriate action, right? So what if there's an appropriate action that people can be taught, trained, that is actually learnable, so that when they make their decisions about what empowers their life, they really do have the control over saying yes or no to it? What if? So I see, again, we're getting close to the top of the half hour. And if we'd like to make any closing comments and then say our goodbyes, Lisa, would you like to be first?
Sure. And words, all I could think of was the song, and words are all I have. But I've been, because my background is actually in copywriting as well, so I've always had an interest in the influence of how you put words together purposely to influence other people. But I mean, basic conversation is ultimately that as well. So I love what you say, and to live the question is a quote I often refer back to, just to always be curious, like Vanessa will always say, and ask the question like Ken will say, and you will say. So if that can be something that can be learned, and how to speak and how to use words and how to listen to words, and how people can be influenced, how you are being influenced almost every minute of every day, and how to make your own wise choice.
Excellent. Anything else?
No, I'm good. So thank you.
Thanks for being here and being fully engaged. I appreciate it, and I know our viewers do too. Ken?
So I think I'll end with a little metaphor, and definitely in writing, but just in language. It's, for me, the important thing has been to take responsibility for the impact and just turn the light on in rooms and not get overly caught up in whether someone is interested in that room, is going to spend any time with it. It's just flicking a light on and saying, hey, you know, there's something here, and not trying to push them into something that fits my sense of, you know, value or identity or anything like that. And just, you know, like we're talking about candles, lighting candles, you can turn a light on without, you know, forcing anything, I guess. It's, yeah, that's all I got.
Awesome as usual. Thank you, sir. Vanessa?
So I have two quotes I want to share that I just came across recently. I thought they'd apply to the viewers of the podcast and what we talk about each week. So the first one is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, "This time, like all times, is a very good one if we but know what to do with it."
Love that.
So I guess that's just referring to just, you know, seizing of the day, appreciating every moment, realizing that we talked about this a few episodes back, but you know, the years are short, but the days can be so long sometimes. At least they feel that way. And then the other one is by Voltaire. Just very general, but I think it has a lot of weight. It's, think for yourself and let others enjoy the privilege of doing so too.
I love that one.
Absolutely. I think the French word is laissez-faire, right? Yeah.
Okay.
The Beatles had a lot of fun with that particular word in English, words in English. So I think the last thought I want to leave you with, there's really two perfect times to do something. 20 years ago and today. The one you can do something about is always today and today and today. So if there's something in your life that's causing you pain, think about it and see if it's really true, if it makes sense, or if it's something that someone sold you somewhere along the way and it's gotten attached to you. I think that's the end of our podcast for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your participation, and bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.